The 10 Peaks idea came about, originally we were planning a trip to the Himalayas, and shortly after the earthquake we had to cancel that trip. So we decided, as a bit of a warm-up, to do a trek through the Australian Alps. We decided to tackle the Aussie 10 before we went over to the Himalayas and tackled something much larger. So Simon out of Adelaide had teed up a trip.
I love going up to the hills and the mountains every year, and I thought it'd be a great way to take some of the guys up there to the mountains and show them something different. It's hard, quite technical, it can be a lot of risk as well.
I hadn't really ever done that sort of backcountry camping and hiking in the snow before. Been living in subtropical Queensland for most of my life.
I actually done the Lake Argyle swim. I'd signed up for another challenge, so I didn't think I could do sort of the two back-to-back challenges. It wasn't until 2 or 3 weeks out when Simon told me that Rob McHugh had hurt his knee and he couldn't do it anymore. So I just put my hand up and said, I'd be keen to do it.
Part of the training regime was really making sure everyone was on top of it. We had a very tight regime of going up and down hills with weight in your pack. You didn't have to be a runner, you didn't have to be going fast, but you needed your shoulders ready.
Simon's preparation was immaculate. I mean, in terms of the amount of work he did on the equipment that we needed, the preparation in terms of training. The only problem was none of us followed the instructions at all.
I'd walk in and out of work about 12, 15 k's a day, have a pack full of old textbooks, and then on the weekends just really walking up and down the hills around Brisbane. So lost a couple of toenails during the training.
I probably got fed income about 6 weeks beforehand. That's when I started running initially and then just hiking. So that was my weekends basically.
I would say my key training was shopping, so actually going out and buying all the gear that I had to buy, because it was sort of 2 weeks that I had to get ready.
The other skill that might surprise people is the cooking. You need to be able to cook to bring stuff up there, and everyone had their own dish. So that was the real challenge, to see which one was edible, because you need to dehydrate it.
I think back to the week before heading off, and I was running around Anaconda trying to buy stuff, and then the day before we left I was forced to work from home because I was dehydrating apples, because my job was to come up with dehydrated apple pie.
What they didn't tell you in this outstanding pitch was that whenever you do your business in the mountain, you can't leave it there.
Like everyone put it up on this bloody mantle, but then once it was done, and you got over it. It was the carrying back down to camp, which wasn't the fun part.
We arrived in Jindabyne, we went to the gear shop and got all our equipment. Then the next day up early and we went up to near Perisher. We didn't go to the resort, but we spent the day with an instructor getting guidance on skiing techniques, and so we went and did some travelling and touring that morning up some hills just to get familiar with what we'd be taking with us. So that was the training day.
The night before we were packing, repacking, making sure we had everything and making sure your weight was as absolutely minimal as possible.
So the day in, you start at the bottom of Thredbo. You put all the gear on the chairlifts. Saves about 4 or 5 hours by just getting to the top of Eagle's Nest.
We got up to the top of the chairlift, and it was just absolute whiteout, and we didn't really know if this was normal, but obviously the guide definitely alluded to the fact that this was pretty poor conditions, and unfortunately we only got a couple of K into the park before we had to actually bunker down. That first day was a bit of an eye-opener.
The tents went up reasonably well. There were a few goes. You needed to be able to secure that tent, otherwise it just went crazy at nights with the wind. A few of the guys built snow walls around their tents to stop the wind hitting it and gusting.
That whole day, that first day was just miserably cold. So you basically get ice and then you boil it and that's your water, and we had this dehydrated food which we had to rehydrate, and I just remember within 5 minutes it was really cold.
Second day was the best day on the trip. Glorious sunshine, you needed sun cream. We started off with a view to getting to Kosciuszko on the first day because we knew that the weather was going to be coming in later in the week. So we hit several peaks, which was great. South Rams Head, North Rams Head, Mueller's Pass, Kosciuszko, and a few other interesting peaks.
I mean, it was pretty funny when we summited what we thought was the first peak, and then Alex McNabb starts questioning the guide on the actual coordinates of the peak and basically saying, well, I don't think we've summited the right peak, so I think we should go over here. And then lo and behold, Alex was actually correct, and we hadn't actually summited the very first peak. And to be honest, the first one, the view wasn't that great, but then when we got to the actual peak, it was a great view, and you could see why, it was one of the actual 10 peaks. So that was pretty funny, to be honest. Yeah.
I mean, that day, that was the hardest day because we lost so much with the poor weather on the first day. we had to make up miles. And I think we did like 15 to 16 Ks with backpacks and snowshoes. And my snowshoes were broken, literally on the first day, and Ben Milton's broke, I think, on the second day. So when you're walking with snowshoes and they're clomping like thongs, effectively, it made it even especially more taxing.
Summiting Kosciuszko was just one step at a time, 1 foot after another, zigzagging your way up because it's really too steep to do vertically. So once you get up the top and you see the little urn on the top, it was a pretty sweet moment to think that we're at the highest point in Australia, and obviously the view was amazing. So good to be able to celebrate with a good bunch of guys from Blue Sky.
It was good to see the team work together to get up the mountain. You know, some of the guys had been a bit sick, and so the rest of the team helped them to get up, and I think it was a good shared experience being up there together.
I didn't realise it, but I had pneumonia going up there. So every time we hiked, I was running petrol out of the tank. Now, admittedly, I'm not as fit as I'd like to be, but I thought something was funny. And I died getting up Kosciuszko, but such was my grit and taking myself out of my comfort zone, I got up there in the end.
So the guide made the call that he said, look, we're going to be tent bound today. Turns out we did a few fun things though. We did a lot of glissading up and down the hills. We went around a few different peaks just around the campsite, which was a lot of fun. So yeah, that was a fun day, but then the weather hit and it was brutal.
I think the most challenging thing would be the nights. You get very little sleep up there. It's very exposed, and you're camping right on the snow with only a thin mattress in between you and the snow.
The evening of the third day was when things got turned really sour.
The rain and the wind that night was just unrelenting, and we both woke up at probably, I don't know, 11 o'clock, and there was just all this rain belting into our tent.
Bruce though?
Yeah, big nice.
Look at that pool over there.
We're pulling the pin.
It's absolutely fucked. Good water down there.
Mission abort!
Let's check that shit out.
There's water everywhere. I'm saturated. My mattress has water in it.
Yeah, the low point was definitely being in a tent in the rain with 100-kilometre-hour winds. You know, we had one night where there was no prospect at all of getting any sleep. That wasn't much fun, but ultimately, if it was easy, it wouldn't be a challenge.
On the trek out after we'd been rained out, we got cut off from the main area of Thredbo by effectively what had turned into a bit of a raging, swollen creek. Matt was lucky enough to take a running jump and get over it, and I tried to do the same thing but missed. Ended up in the freezing cold water up to my waist, stuck, snowshoe on the bottom, in freezing cold conditions, which probably wasn't ideal for hypothermia and things like that.
When I got back and everything, I was obviously really happy with how things had gone initially, but again, a bit disappointed with the fact that we didn't get to tick off every single peak. So that was a little bit of a learning for me, because it didn't feel like physically it was out of our reach. It just goes to show that sometimes Mother Nature is a lot more powerful than what you are.
These longer challenges are great to go away and do things over several days with people, because you're building that relationship all the time, not just the event, but the lead up to the event. So if you get the opportunity to do something like this, fantastic opportunity to sort of spend time with your colleagues and build those bonds which will last forever.
The experience of doing something uncomfortable, doing something hard and overcoming it, I think that has valuable life lessons across everything we do. And I think it really helps you when things get tough at work, dig deep and keep going and find a way. And so from that perspective, I think it's a really valuable thing to do.
I'd highly recommend it, and I think the uptake's pretty good. It's just about getting that to flow on to the new starters and some of the other people who may feel that they're in the background there. It's a great opportunity for them to put themselves in the foreground, meet and associate with team members that they don't typically have anything to do with. It's very valuable.
Experiences like these, I think it's just critical to share them with other people, but to have a group of guys up there that to be able to share it with was fantastic. I mean, for me, that's the first time I've ever been up Mount Kosciuszko, and I couldn't think of a better bunch of guys to do it with.